Chargers training camp is starting next week, and today we are calling our shot. We are telling you the 3 most likely undrafted free agents that could make this team.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the Chargers have one of the richest undrafted free agent histories of all time across the NFL, and I'm going to tell you why. There is going to be a new undrafted free agent tight end that is going to follow in the footsteps of the great Antonio Gates, and that man is going to be Zach Heins. He is going to make this 53-man roster. And then when you're looking at other positions of other places that could potentially crack this roster, I think we're looking at the safety room. You know, guys like Jalyn Phillips is definitely a big name there. And then, of course, offensive line is another place I think we could see somebody crack that roster. Karsen Barnhart, the former Michigan man, is the name that definitely rings the bell.
Especially how much he helped the Michigan Wolverines during that national championship run. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, who helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, one of the best things that happens every year is seeing the dreams come true of undrafted free agents that find their way onto the Chargers roster. And like you said, it's a rich history of guys, not just Antonio Gates, but Austin Eckler and Michael Davis, and obviously Malcolm Floyd and some of the greats of yesteryear. There's so many names that you can pick from there, and the Chargers have gotten so much great contributions. Adrian Phillips, another good one as well, Jaleel Adai.
Yeah.
They've been able to do that unlike many teams in the league, and I hope that continues under Joe Ortiz, and I think it will with the strong crop of undrafted free agents they brought in this year. But as we were going through them with training camp right around the corner, before anything starts, before we see them out in the field, we wanted to kind of plant our flags with on some of the guys that we like the most, and obviously at positions that make sense. And Zach Heins is the guy we're talking about first, because he's one of the guys where you turn him on. South Dakota State University, they had Tucker Kraft get drafted pretty high last year. He goes undrafted this year to Zach Heins, where you turned it on and you said, that's a Jim Harbaugh guy. Like, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, it's a Leonardo DiCaprio meme, him pointing at the TV, like, look, there, that's what it looks like. That's what a Jim Harbaugh guy looks like in the wild, because he's an uber physical tight end that's a people mover, and he's not going to dazzle you with supreme athleticism. But when you look at this tight end room, David, it feels like there's an opportunity there, and a guy like Zach Heins could make some noise.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that doesn't have a lot of the flash, doesn't have a lot of the sizzle, but he is that bring your lunch pail to work type of guy. He's that Jim Harbaugh style of player. He is going to come in, he is going to impose his will, and he has got a lot of will to impose. He is 6'6", 260 pounds, pretty much the prototypical size and weight that you're looking for when you're bringing in a tight end into the National Football League. And, I mean, some of the things that I liked about Zach Heins, strong but soft hands. I feel like when he did get the opportunities to go out and run routes, the routes are a little bit of a work in progress, but the hands are there. I mean, he absolutely can catch the football. But the blocking part is where I got really excited when I was watching Zach Heins. He delivers a very good initial punch in pass protection. He's a high effort blocker. He blocks to the whistle and does not lose many one-on-one blocks. This is a guy that's always looking for somebody to block. Even when his teammates catch a pass, he's looking to get out in front, trying to open up lanes for them, trying to be a team player. He is a real team player. It's very evident when you put on the tape and you watch him. That's why I get really excited about Zach Heins and why I feel like he's going to make this 53-man roster. He just looks like the type of tight end that's going to fit into this room, fit into what this offense is trying to do this season.
I love that call. I think he absolutely has an opportunity. And I think when you look at kind of the composition of what the tight end room is right now and what they want that group to be as far as a well-rounded group, a group that's going to be a benefit to you in the run game, which is why one of the first signings that they made was Will Dissly. And when I look at a guy like Zach Heins, I think it's great Will Dissly kind of insurance. Because, I mean, Hayden Hurst has shown the ability to run block, but he is their main receiving option at the position. And last year, he was not good at run blocking, one of the worst in the NFL. But he actually at least has it on his track record. He can be. But that's not why they brought him in. That's what Will Dissly is for. He is to be an addition to the offensive line that is going to help them improve this running game and turn it hopefully into a top 10 unit. That is such great insurance because if you lose Will Dissly, God forbid, who else do you have that's even close to being able to bring what he does to the table? And I'm not saying that Zach Heins can bring that, but I think he would be the closest thing on this roster behind Will Dissly instantly. I mean, is right now, even on the 90-man roster. So I think you could easily see why he would fit there. I think the other thing is you have guys like Donald Parham and Stone Smart at the end of this. And I think that's where you kind of look at it and say, okay, well, if the Chargers are really trying to take this thing in that direction where they need their tight ends to be able to go out there, be in line and block like that, and also be able to catch passes, it's like, okay, well, those two guys aren't really well equipped. They definitely have the edge in the receiving part of things, but Zach Heins is already probably a much better blocker than both of them.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, when you look at Donald Parham Jr. and you look at Stone Smart, they're pass first, receiver first tight ends. I mean, I think Donald Parham should have the frame to be able to block better with 6'8", very, very long arms, very long limbs.
He's very thin though. I mean,
yeah, he's he's definitely thin,
very
for
thin
sure.
frame.
He doesn't have a lot of weight back there behind the punches. I think he gives good effort, but he just doesn't have the strength. He doesn't have the sand in the back part to be able to provide the type of power that you really need to be an effective run blocker in the NFL. And that's not a problem for Zach Heins. I mean, Zach Heins delivers a punch. He wants to abuse you. He wants to impose his will. And he does. You see it. You know, when you put on the tape and you watch him, he is a very, very effective blocker, a willing blocker. And you can tell like he enjoys it. Like there are some times when you watch players on tape and you see them block and they're just like, all right, well, I'm just here doing a job. They're not really going full max out effort because they're not getting the ball thrown to them. This isn't a problem for Zach Heins. He's happy to be on the field. He wants to be physical. He shows being physical, and he appreciates every opportunity he gets to go smack somebody in the mouth. And that's Jim Harbaugh football for you, no doubt.
Yeah, and Greg Roman football too. I mean, 6'6", 260 pounds, 33-inch arms, just about. Like that is big another guy who could be an impact player as a run blocker. And I think the big thing about Donald Parham and Stone Smart is they were major contributors into why the Chargers' run game was absolutely abysmal last year and one of the worst in the league. So if you're trying to improve upon that, and that's that much of a focus, as we heard time and time again, this coaching staff tell us that it is, it would lead you to believe that someone like Zach Heins has a shot. And I think a lot of it will depend on how many are you keeping, right? Because even if, okay, let's say you're keeping 4 tight ends and you look at, someone like Ben Mason as a fullback, and the Chargers are still going to keep 4 tight ends. Donald Parham probably makes it in that scenario, right? If we're not counting Ben Mason there. Yeah. And then who else, right? Because to me, I think he's more likely to make it than Stone Smart. Yeah. I think a room like that is pretty well-rounded. You have a Donald Parham that's kind of a pseudo backup to Hayden Hurst. Sure. And then you have a guy in Zach Heins that's kind of a backup to Will Dissly. And it just makes sense composition-wise.
I like the sound of that room. I do.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing is the reason he wasn't drafted, he ran a 5-second flat 40, but he's still a guy that, scored 7 touchdowns last season. And like, even if you're not athletic, he's able to box out defenders and be an impact player in the red zone. 17 touchdowns over 3 years is not something you see many collegiate, even at the FCS level at South Dakota State, not something you see very often. So there was another name to keep an eye on here. I think it's kind of funny philosophically how the Chargers went about drafting or taking in their undrafted tight ends, because they got literally the anti-Zach Heins.
Polar opposites.
And Luke Benson. And I was like, why did they get this dude? He has no production. Senior, junior, or his last 2 years in college, he had 1 year, 9 catches for 84 yards, 9 catches for 85 yards the next year. Almost the exact same average.
Couldn't get to 10.
Just about 10 yards per catch. So you'd say, okay, probably a modest athlete. No, the dude ran a 4.43. Yeah, I mean, he only weighs 233 pounds. But it's like, okay.
I had to do a double take, too. I was like, what?
You run a 4-4-3 at tight end, then I understand why the flyer is being taken on you, sir. But it's going to be interesting to see what both these guys can do, but I'm very bullish on Zach Heins' chances. And on the defense, where the Chargers could really use some help, I love Jalyn Phillips. And in a weak safety room after the top two guys, I think he absolutely has a shot at this roster. We're going to talk about him and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. Whatever you're looking for, with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins this season. Because with eBay Motors, keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. I also need to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And the thing that I love about LinkedIn Jobs, you get the best of both worlds. You get a ton of people, a ton of options very quickly, but you're also getting quality candidates, because when you're trying to hire someone, what you really don't want to happen is for you to hire the wrong person and waste your time there and then have to be right back in the same spot hiring someone again. Go with the place that gets you qualified candidates. Go with the place that gives you a curated list of guys and people that you can actually find to help your business, that are going to be a good fit and that are going to help your team take this year to the next level. That's what LinkedIn is all about. It's constantly finding ways to make the process easier. It's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, it is Undrafted Free Agent Friday, I guess, so we got to keep getting into these guys that we absolutely believe have a chance to make this roster. And it's going to be so exciting, because I think, especially when you're seeing a new regime take over, it's going to look a lot different. And one of the main things that we keep harping on over and over again is, how do we watch Jim Harbaugh turn this team, who is absolutely a finesse team, into that physical blue-collar team? And I think if there's ever a year to see some of the old guard leave and have some new blood, even if they're undrafted free agents, but undrafted free agents that were picked by the team that knows what direction it wants to go in, now is the year. It's a golden opportunity. And I think what we're always looking for is the positions that have the best chance. And that's why Jalyn Phillips makes a ton of sense. And I thought this was going to be Akeem Dent, who we'll talk about. But Jalyn Phillips is a guy I loved when I watched him on tape. The safety from Clemson, who fell out of the draft basically because of a bad 40 time, ran a 4.6 40. But when you turn it on, it's so hard not to like him. And I think you saw that with several guys this year who didn't run as fast at 40 times as we thought, right? Kamari Lassiter being one of them, who I absolutely loved. He ended up still being a second-round pick, even with the 4.6 40. This is a guy, David, that I think absolutely has a chance. When you look at this safety room and you look at the lack of depth there, it feels like one of the easiest positions to try to make this team.
No question about it. I think when you look at the Chargers safety room, I think there's two guys you absolutely know are going to be there, Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. But after that, there's a lot of uncertainty. You just don't really know or feel good, or can't feel incredibly good about really anybody else. Obviously Tony Jefferson knows the defense, so I mean he's probably the next guy on that list. I guess in my mind, AJ.
But
Finley
there's
was
no
there
one
last
I
year.
would stake my
I'm not that
for.
confident in it. Yeah,
there's not one person I would say I 100% after Derwin James and Alohi Gilman, I'm going to 100% guarantee you that safety is going to be on the team. That's crazy. That's crazy to say.
Exactly. But I'm right there with you. So you're looking at Jalyn Phillips here, 6 foot 207, and there's a lot to like here. And I think one of the very first things that sticks out to you is he's a very good tackler, and that is extremely, extremely important, because we've seen too many safeties, too many defensive backs that the Chargers have either drafted or brought in that have great ball skills or had great ball skills in college, but was not able to tackle, and you did not feel good about that person being your last line of defense defender. And I'm just tired of seeing that. So It is very nice to have Jalyn Phillips here, a very good tackler with very good stopping power. Also, for me, I thought he had pretty good speed to run sideline to sideline. I feel like he showed some very good anticipation and timing when he was breaking up passes. Like, this is a guy who understood where he was going to be, where he needed to be, what his assignments were, and he had enough speed, play speed, to be able to get where he needed to go. I feel like this guy has a lot of traits that you like, especially when you're looking at an undrafted free agent who you want to give an opportunity to. I mean, if your baseline is you're a great tackler and you have enough speed to get where you need to be, then I'm already on board, and I need to see what it looks like on the football field.
Yeah, and I loved what he did against good competition, too. Watched the game against Florida State and had all 22 of that, and had 3 pass breakups against a team that lost 1 game all year, and it was when it was a bowl game that, they basically played nobody in. He stepped up. Good long arms that helped him breaking up passes. I mean, he has ball skills. He's a good tackler. And I think when you're someone like him that might not be the most athletic guy, you have to be a high IQ player and you have to know where to be. And I think that does get a little bit higher or a little bit harder, right? The next level, because it's like you have to even compensate more because the athletes are even better.
Yeah.
But it just never, the 4.6 never just showed up to me. Like there just wasn't times where I'm like, he's good,
he's
but
a little too slow there, right?
He's just going to get torched left and right. I just didn't see that. And I just thought that he did a great job of reading what's in front of him. He was a very disciplined run defender, would stay there on the backside when he needed to. And I think, David, when you look at, JT Woods or AJ Finley or Tony Jefferson, I mean, the Chargers are probably keeping 4 safeties, I would have to think, right? So, even if it's a room that's Derwin James, Alohi, right? And then you have Tony Jefferson, a veteran, to go along with a more inexperienced guy in Jalyn Phillips. That makes sense to me, especially when you consider the fact that neither JT Woods or AJ Finley, the kind of incumbents in this case, really have no NFL experience either, right? So it does feel like, outside of just, we know we took JT Woods with a 3rd-round pick, if it's just about the play, why can't it happen?
No question. I mean, you haven't seen anything redeeming in either one of those players to say, I have to reserve a spot for those guys on the team. Like the JT Woods has hardly played, and at least AJ Finley was able to contribute on special teams.
Yeah,
so
made the team.
That's worth
played
it,
as an undrafted free agent.
You still got to be confident in this guy to be able to step on the field and be able to provide some snaps for you, and you feel comfortable that you're not going to have a gigantic drop off. Like that's the whole point of having quality depth. But you look at these positions and these players and where they have opportunities to make this team. The safety room is obviously, I think, number 1 on that list. Like there is somewhere for someone to make this team, whether it's Tony Jefferson, whether it's Akeem Dent that we're going to talk about in a second, or Jalyn Phillips, which I feel like with his skill set, he has a very good chance to make this roster.
It does seem like it. I mean, they're definitely athletically, we'll see if he can hold up, right? Maybe he just can't hold up athletically. I mean, he ran a 4.6 240, 5.71 RAS is pretty average, poor explosive grades. But the Chargers have had success with other safeties that were a little less athletic, like an Adrian Phillips or an Alohi Gilman, who had an even lower RAS than that, and he's turned out to be a pretty fine player in his own right.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think that he has a good chance. And another name to keep an eye on would be Akeem Dent. He's a guy that I've seen people be really high on. So there must be tape out there that I wasn't able to procure, right? That maybe he looks a lot better. But the games I saw, the tackling just wasn't there. Maybe it's like you were saying, the Chargers have taken so many defensive backs that haven't been able to tackle. Maybe there is a little PTSD there,
right? The standard is a little bit higher
It's the JT Woods syndrome, right? Yeah. It's something like even Michael Davis early on. We just saw it too many times where maybe that just turned me off so much.
And turning your dang head around, too.
That
would drive me crazy.
God, so many pass interferences, too. But, to me, the biggest thing I had with Akeem Dent, it just felt like he was so close to making a lot of plays, but it just didn't, right? It was just almost made a lot of good plays.
And we've seen that. We've seen that with Chris Rumpf, too. It's like he would almost get to the
in college for sure coming out.
And he just couldn't finish the plays. With Akeem Dent, he has real speed. He's a 4.45 guy.
He's a better athlete,
he did play some, free safety and strong safety. He has some good instincts, but he's a little over aggressive. The ankle tackles and the missed tackles were mind-numbing to me. They were so frustrating to watch. When, we watch 3 or 4 games, it's like, okay, it happens in one game, fine. But if it happens in 3 or 4 games, it's a pattern, and that's not a pattern I want to see when I'm watching a guy that's trying to make the team.
Yeah, it does. Like I said when we talked about him originally, like, hey, if he becomes Ryan Ficken's best friend, who knows? Because he does have all the makings of a great special teams player. He can get down the field quick. His instincts are decent, not afraid to go lay a hit. It's just being more consistent when he gets to that hit point and making plays more consistently, just what's not something we saw. Yeah. Played at a high, played in high level competition, played for a great Florida State team. I don't see it, but it also feels like he is a guy that, hey, if everything started clicking and all the almost plays that he had turned into actual big plays made, he's a guy that can make a splash. He's a guy that could get some coaches' attentions because they know that the athleticism there. If they can turn that into something, good for them. I mean, he definitely has the makings of someone who could be better than he was and be a better professional than he was a collegiate player. But he also just feels like a guy that if you're seeing those missed tackles in the preseason, it's going to be a real turnoff really quick for this coaching staff. And when they're making decisions, that's going to come up. But we do have more to get into, including a former Michigan player that we think has a good chance, especially after saving Michigan on their title run and coming in and plugging holes and being a really nice utility player for them in 2023. We're going to talk about Karsen Barnhart and a couple more guys to keep your eyes on heading into training camp because they have a chance to make this roster and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. I do have to tell you, though, that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. One of the things that is so tough going through life is feeling like you aren't reaching the milestones that you should be at a certain time, especially when you're comparing yourself to others on social media. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives, especially because it might look like they have everything together. It might look like they're living the most glamorous, perfect life on social media. But in reality, they probably have their own problems as well. And therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have so you can start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. David, there's one more guy I want to talk about today that I absolutely think has a good chance to make this roster. And very early, not in pads, only so much you can glean and really nothing from the offensive line. But they showed you in OTAs kind of where they have him slotted going into training camp. And that's Karsen Barnhart, who got, I think, pretty much all of the left guard snaps with the second team offense during OTAs, and a guy that the Chargers and their coaching staff are very familiar with, a guard from Michigan last year that has some versatility at tackle as well. But I do want to make sure everyone's checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel where you can get wall-to-wall coverage of every sport, but getting the analysis that only the local Locked On experts can bring you who cover their teams every single day. So go subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or find it on the Amazon TV free TV channels app. David, let's talk about Karsen Barnhart because he's a guy that's versatile. I think first thing, he filled a lot of roles, wore a lot of hats for Michigan, probably projects best at the NFL level as a guard, which tell me if you've heard that before, right? The Chargers grabbing tackles that they expect to be guards, one regime to another. I guess some things never change. But as a former Michigan guy, as a guy that really, has that experience, has the familiarity, and played pretty damn well at the collegiate level, it makes a ton of sense if the Chargers are trying to build a very deep offensive line. They plan on keeping a lot of bodies in that room. Karsen Barnhart is number one amongst the offensive linemen that have a chance to make this team.
When you're looking at a undrafted free agent offensive lineman or a backup offensive lineman, you want somebody who can plug as many holes as possible. And Karsen Barnhart can absolutely do that. Like, this is a guy that played right tackle, played left guard, played right guard, pretty much every single position on the offensive line. And that is extremely valuable because the offensive line, they take a beating. They go out there and it is a physical position. You're knocking heads for 60 plus plays a game. Those guys get hurt. And so you have to have guys that are able to step in and be able to solve a crisis and be able to get you through a football game. Karsen Barnhart can do that. I love how he doesn't quit on plays. Even when he misses blocks initially, he's able to recover. He's got a mean streak in him, which I like. And obviously Jim Harbaugh likes. That's why he brought him to Michigan and also gave him an opportunity with the Chargers. He's looking to knock somebody over, which I absolutely love. He does a good job of controlling rushers with his hands. And he does have some power. Like, he does have some power to turn defenders out of the hole when he's run blocking. So, like, he has a skill set that I feel like is probably better suited for the inside. But you love the versatility and you love his ability to play all over the offensive line.
And what I love is that he comes from a town in Michigan called Paw Paw, Michigan. If you're an offensive lineman and you're from Paw Paw, Michigan, you're going to have a great career, kid. Like, if your name's Joe Alt, and that's your whole name, you're going to be really good offensive lineman. Like, some things just make too much sense. And if you're from Paw Paw, you get to go win a national championship with the team I'm sure you grew up rooting for.
Oh, man.
You're going to have a good chance.
What a dream.
Oh, man. I mean, he took over a right guard for the final 3 games, including the playoffs, and they did not miss a beat. They played some of their best football in the playoff, and they beat 2 really, really good teams in Alabama and Washington. Yeah. I think when you're looking at this, too, it does feel like he's the left guard with that position to lose right now with the second team. And I think if you're the Chargers and you're looking for guys that not only can play this year, but cheap offensive line contracts that could potentially turn into more, we'll see what his kind of ceiling is. It feels like a dude who's totally maximizing the athleticism that he has, but he's not super athletic, not the strongest, not the fastest, but does the right thing, stays disciplined, and does a lot of the boring things.
Yeah, the want to is there.
The want to is absolutely there. I mean, he's a good run blocker. He's not a mauler, but he does the job, and he knows exactly what he needs to do. He knows exactly how much space he needs to create for a running back to find a seam and have that to turn into a positive play. I think looking at it, 16 games at right tackle, 9 games at left tackle, only 5 total games at right guard and left guard combined, so not a ton of experience there. So there might be some learning curve, especially at the NFL level. But there wasn't when they needed him most, and he stepped into a role that he had never been in.
He said, I'll do it. I'm right there. Give me the ball, coach. I got this.
And he didn't miss a beat. And I think, I like what he brings to the table. I think the connections are there. And if you're talking about, hey, pretty good player, but also has the familiarity and then, a coaching staff that knows him well, and I'm sure, will give him every chance to show that he can make this team during the training camp in the preseason. That matters when you're talking about who you think is going to make this team. Absolutely.
No question. No doubt.
He's from Paw Paw. But I think the names to keep an eye on here, David, 2 more guys we really like. I think the Chargers did a really good job finding offensive linemen at the bottom of this roster where even if they don't make it, make you much better on the practice squad and give you legitimate guys that you think could come up and at least give you a spell or turn into someone that can at least be a reliable backup. And we're talking about guys we think probably could get cut. And the guys I'm looking at are Willis Patrick and Bucky Williams. 2 guys that I think, again, scream Jim Harbaugh football, scream Greg Roman football. Like, Bucky Williams looks like a lumberjack and plays like a lumberjack. And you're like, what does playing like a lumberjack mean? It's like, imagine if Paul Bunyan was playing football. Like, that's how Bucky Williams likes to play.
And he's a redhead, just so we can put that out there.
Another redhead. I mean, why not just have both of your centers? I mean, you could have 3. Brendan Hymus is like kind of a redhead too.
Oh, he is for sure.
You could have 3 ginger centers on this roster. So, like, why not? But also, he has a total mean streak. Like, plays,
no question.
Past the whistle. Didn't see him get flagged for it, but like, do not stand near a pile. Do not hit this man's quarterback a little bit late. Like,
well, and I love that he posted too, Dan. I mean, 61 games, 53 starts, and he was a team captain. I mean, those are all things that you're looking for, man. Like, really, really solid football player. I mean, he dominated in the conference that he was in the Sun Bowl.
He did, and also was bumped up a conference to go to Appalachian State, and actually, was successful at every level. That's one of the things I loved against Willis Patrick. Obviously, besides the fact that he is the opposite inverted name of a Hall of Fame player that played for your coach, Willis Patrick Willis, but also another guy where it was like Division II, FCS, and then made it to FBS, a Power 5 school at TCU, and still played really, really well in Willis Patrick. Like, those are all guys that, like...
And Willis Patrick is gigantic, 6'4", 355 pounds. Like, he is an absolute tank.
Yeah, man, that dude is... thick. It's like if you had the strategy of like, let's just see what happens if we put like a goalie in there that just takes up most of the goal just by sheer girth. That's what Willis Patrick would bring to the table. Like, even if he's not moving, it's going to be hard for defensive tackles to get
just
around.
Get him out of the way. Have fun with that. Good luck.
But he is such a cool story. And a
Oh, yeah.
lot of these guys, like it's your own personal hard knocks for the Chargers this year. It's those
No
guys
doubt.
you're seeing if they can do what many have tried and failed to do, but happens every year. They're surprises. And
Less
all
than
three of these
1%
guys.
of 1%, right? I mean, these
Exactly.
are like the absolute best of the best, and it's amazing to be able to see these guys try to make their dream become a reality.
It is. It's cool. And it's something we'll definitely be keeping tabs on the entire preseason and training camp. And the thing is, too, is there's going to be guys we haven't even thought of. Like, we haven't talked about a wide receiver because the Chargers have 15 wide receivers. So it's going to be impossible to make it as an undrafted free agent, right?
It's not going to happen.
But there's going to be other guys that are going to, I mean, nobody had Elijah Dotson really on their radar last year. You know, some people liked him. We liked him. Nobody knew what he was going to do. And then he made himself, like, make the team, basically.
Yeah.
So, like, there will be guys like that, and it's going to be so fun to watch. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Important programming note. Daniel Wade is leaving for paternity leave next week. What we're going to do is we're going to have shows for you Monday through Wednesday while I'm on paternity leave. That will already be recorded, so we'll have the normal both of us on here, and then I'll be coming on as a guest as much as I can on paternity leave, and next week we know training camp starts. There's no way I'm missing that first day, baby or not. So I'll come on as a guest. David will be hosting for the next 2 weeks, but at the start of training camp, that Thursday after we have the episodes we'll already have, David will be hosting. I'll be coming on with a guest as I can, as many times as I can. And if not, we will have a beat reporter who is at practice that day to come on and talk about it with you guys. It's going to be an awesome couple of weeks. I'm going to get some great time with the baby, but you guys are in great hands, and we will make sure it is your team every day. We will be here for you guys. So to make sure you don't miss it, because we have great shows coming for you guys, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On LAC, me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, and David Drogemeyer at Dro Talk SC. We all post the show to both of our pages every day. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Baby or not, you will be seeing my face over the next couple of weeks, but I will be on paternity leave. We have a great slate for you guys, though, and we are so excited to bring you our best training camp coverage that we have so far and having the best guys that are at practice or when we're at practice to come on here and talk about it. So super excited for next week, getting into training camp battles, which we'll have for you guys, training camp primer. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.